We start with breaking news years in the making. The Supreme Court rejecting Trump's bid to stop Congress from getting his tax returns and other financial records. For 3 years, Trump has been fighting battle after battle in the court system to prevent the House Ways and Means Committee from obtaining these documents. And here it is. Take a look. The order from the United States Supreme Court. A pending case is now closed. The court very blunt on Trump's stay request. It's denied. It's not signed. There's no dissents. The Treasury Department will hand over those tax returns. You know, Trump broke precedent by not disclosing his tax returns when he was running for president. And even before Congress wanted those tax returns, the man had excuses.
I would love to give them, but I'm not going to do it while I'm under audit. You don't learn anything from a tax return. I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes when she releases her 33,000 emails. They're under audit. They have been for a long time. They're extremely complex. People wouldn't understand them.
Excuse after excuse there. Here's a quick fact check for you. No law prevents someone from releasing their taxes while under audit. The chief lawyer for the House urged the Supreme Court not to intervene, pointing to a new Congress in January. Any further delay would leave the committee and Congress as a whole little or no time to complete their legislative work. Joining me now is former Watergate prosecutor and former federal prosecutor Jill Wine-Banks and Susanne Craig, the Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter with the New York Times, who was anonymously mailed Trump's 1995 taxes. Susanne, I'd like to start with you this evening. What will the Ways and Means Committee end up seeing when it finally receives Trump's tax returns?
Well, in addition to getting the 1995 tax return, we also got decades of his corporate and personal tax returns. And I think the first thing they're going to see is he's a pretty bad businessman. But I'm not sure that's what they're looking for. You know, this story has its roots in Richard Nixon. It goes back to those days when there was there's procedures that were put into the IRS that required that the president be audited every year. And that was just because Richard Nixon had some personal tax shenanigans going on, and they just wanted to make sure, they wanted to have a way to review it. And the Ways and Means Committee, in asking for this, is saying, look, we want to look at that audit procedure. We want to see, how it's done. Is it rigorous? There's not really a lot known about it. It's in the IRS manual, but they want to have more, I think, oversight and more understanding of it. And I think, secondly, just because of everything we have been through with Donald Trump's taxes and the complexity of them, they want to see if there should be changes made to the way that that tax returns are handled of a president. And should there be more disclosure? And this has been going on forever. I mean, it seems back in the Stone Age is the way the news works these days.
You know, Susanne, let's back out for a second then. Let's talk about what you see is the impact of this ruling on Trump as he runs yet again for president. It's like the emperor has no clothes now. What do you think is going to be the consequence from the fact that now Congress is going to see all of this man's tax returns and other financial records?
Right, the Ways and Means Committee will. I mean, I think they've got only a couple weeks now to deal with it. I would look not that this is, a bit of a too little, too late. I mean, I think I'm not sure what we're going to see, if anything, short term, but this can now be an issue that could be revisited down the road. I mean, I think that there is an argument that there should be legislation, and I think potentially down the road there could be a candidate that's not Donald Trump that has complex taxes. They want to revisit it, and they now have the Supreme Court decision at their back.
You know, Jill Wine-Banks, my friend, I'm so glad you're here to start off the show. It's interesting to me to see this 6-3 conservative majority Supreme Court rule, again, in many ways, against Trump. What do you make of this decision today?
It shows that there is hope that even in this very partisan court, even in this court that people are losing faith in, they can come to agreement on something that is as obvious as a law that says that Congress can have these documents. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about the way the law is phrased. It's ridiculous that it took this long. And Susanne is correct when she says too little, too late. Congress is about to expire and go to the Republicans. They are not going to want to look at these documents. And so the fact that the House Ways and Means Committee has the right to them, if they don't have time to review them and use them to formulate new laws. And I would say the new law that really needs to be put in place is one that says every presidential candidate must reveal their taxes, because there is a political issue here. There's a voter's right to know if he claims, I'm this great businessman, I'm a winner, when in fact he's a loser, not just in politics of the last election, but he's a bad businessman. He's gone bankrupt many times. Voters have a right to know that he's lying about that. And so there needs to be a law that says you can see the tax returns and get them right away.
Susanne, to Jill's point, there's not a lot of time for legislative work to be done before the Republicans take over the House majority in January. Putting aside whether or not Trump is just a bad businessman, the idea that perhaps there are other entities, countries, businesses, people that may have undue influence on a candidate for the presidency, is there something that can be done in the little amount of time that's left before the House majority takes its place in January?
No, I don't think so. I don't see that there can be that sort of analysis done in that time. I mean, it just seems impossible, not only just the analysis, but to get something done. But I think that you raised the greater concern to me when I think about the tax returns. There's the idea that, you know, he ran as this self-made man, that he's not, and that he's a great businessman. But I think that the concern when you come to the finances of the person who has the office of the president and all these other offices is what is weighing on them? What financial pressures are weighing on them that we don't know? And I think there is public policy that there should be a healthy discussion. I think at least this could set it up for down the road. I mean, there's just, you know, who knows what's going to happen down the road. So there's some good that could come out of this. But I really think when I think about the finances of the president, I just think you need to know, like, who's pulling the strings when he's making a decision. Is it because he's got a lending pressure or he's got another relationship that's causing the public policy?
Maybe he owes something to someone, and that's going to influence the outcome of something.